World History Edition, Social Studies Network on Facebook, as well as a lot of people from Twitter. So basically we have Miss Angela Lee, who's a superstar in all rights, WAP chat and Facebook pages and on Twitter as well. And she's gonna go ahead and lead the moderation. Thank you everyone for joining us.
All right, hey, welcome everyone. I don't believe I recognize any of your faces, or names. Some from Twitter. I'm Angela Lee, and I've been teaching world history for 23 years, Weston High School in Weston, Massachusetts. I just finished on Friday. Gabe, you just finished today, is that correct? No, you still have one more day.
I finished yesterday. Today was just going in to drop off the car, and then I ended up going to school to help out people.
Yeah.
Cleaning out the classroom.
So sorry for a little bit tired. It's been a long year. How's everyone been? Can you put in the chat really quickly what grade you teach and where you're from? Yeah, I know we started in September, so I think that's why we went for a while later. And Gabe, in Texas they usually start much earlier.
Yeah, we started late. Our school district delayed 4 weeks for COVID, and then we caught up the 4 weeks in summer. But most everyone's been done for a while in Texas.
Oh yeah, that must feel even worse than seeing everyone else done for weeks now. But yeah, we had most of Massachusetts started 2 weeks later than we normally do. We usually start around Labor Day, but everyone sort of started 2 weeks later, so the year ran a little later than normal. So welcome everyone. So glad to see all of you here. And I see for some of you it's your first time. And yeah, and then 7th grade, I am assuming, well, Gabe, that's your area, right? 6th and 7th grade. I teach high school, 9th and 10th grade, both world history. So I usually start around 500-600 CE, and then we end around 1700s. And then with my 10th grade, I teach AP World. So until last year, it was all of world history. And from this year, it's from 1200 to present day. So welcome everyone. Hopefully you'll be able to get something out of today. And I think I'm gonna start because Gabe, you've put in the Wakelet. I'm gonna just give everyone a sort of a quick look at what we have in there, so that they know what to look for. And as people share today, we're going to keep adding stuff in there. So if you have anything else to share, any links or curriculum that you'd like to share, please put it in the chat, and we can add it to the Wakelet. So thanks, Gabe, for starting this off. I put on top the Social Studies Network, which is and Gabe, you should probably put the Facebook group link too there, which Gabe has started how many years ago now, Gabe?
3 or 4. It was just kind of like a discussion at a conference, like, hey, we should do something for social studies. Like there's so many stuff for science and math.
And I'll add on there later. I have one for world history as well. But if you want to look at other videos that Gabe has done for PD, you can find them all here. And then we have a few curriculum Wakelet collections that I wanted to sort of highlight. And this first one I added, it's an intro to world history. I call it a primer for teachers. And most of it's a thread from my friend Matthew Bush, who cannot be here tonight, and also amazing world history teacher. And a lot of, if you're really coming new to this and you'd like to get some resources in terms of books to read just for your own enlightenment, books to read, and a lot of the links that he has put in this Twitter thread are also found in this Wakelet. So I thought that's a really good place to start. And then Gabe had put together this OER project. This is Open Educational Resources. And they really actually started as a big history project. and now has expanded. So they had launched a world history curriculum a few years ago, and now they're going into more AP world history. So they've continued on that track. Excellent material. That's my go-to place if I'm looking for some sort of lesson plan or quick quick resource. Here, I've been working on decolonizing world history. So this is a Wakelet I've put together on decolonizing the world history curriculum. So if you wanted to just browse through that, basically it's about decentering history and decentering it from the West. So a lot of the articles and different materials that I've created is you can find in there. And then I've really gotten into Wakelet. So I've created this collection too, teaching on African history, and then this transatlantic slave trade unit. And on the teaching tips on Africa, I took several institutes and seminars last year. And I made Wakelets for that with all the resources in there too. So those are just sort of curriculum. This also put in the New Visions social studies curriculum, anything, everything, a lot of different resources, amazing resources, especially if you're starting out, and looking at things thematically, regionally. It's organized in all different ways. And I added this because it's an organization called Primary Source, and they focused primarily on China when they first started about 30 years ago. But they've really expanded into sort of global and world history curriculums. And they have libguides for all different areas of the world. And then world history blogs that I follow, and that you should too. World history web resources that were collected from all the different people and thank you for contributing if you contributed. What else do I have? And then some video resources that I've placed in there, and then just general resources. So that's the way it's organized. Hopefully that it can be helpful to you. I'm gonna stop share for now. I think we're gonna just open it up. If you'd like to share something, it's just really open-ended, something that you've done this year, something that you've been thinking about, or just even general questions. If you want to pop that in the chat, or if you want to take over the mic and start talking about your experience with world history, some do's and don'ts, just sort of general ideas. We can get started on that now. And then if you have questions that you'd like to see answered, that would be really great to pop that in the chat.
I have a question because I've never taught world history before. So the previous teacher who left didn't quite have a lot of materials. Like for 7th grade, I had something every day already made. So I'm kind of coming in blank, and we got new textbooks. But I decided this time to start at the end of the book and work backwards in my planning to see where I would start in the book, because the book is 900 pages. I don't know how to get it in a year. Do you guys focus more on early history or medieval or newer world history?
So when you're talking world history, are you talking about high school level?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I start around because in 7th grade they end with the fall of Rome. So that's where I sort of, or they end with Rome, and that's where I sort of pick up. I actually start with a review unit on world religions, just because I think religions is really critical for them to sort of understand. If you're going to be like looking at all of these different areas of the world, you really have to sort of understand the foundation. So I call it sort of their foundational understanding. And then I take it from there, my first unit, and I do regionally, and I've been playing around because in AP World, I approach it more thematically. So in 9th grade, because I stepped back in and they had done it regionally. So we start with Rome, and then we move to Byzantine Empire. So we're trying to also do a little bit chronology, but then we move and we do Islamic world. And from there, we're looking at the, from the Islamic world, we go to the, I want to say the Americas. So we're trying to represent every region of the world before the end of the year. So Americas, Africa, and then we end with Asia. So yeah, so that is how we approach it. I'm not completely happy with it, but this was not the year to revamp the whole thing either. So and then the teacher who had taught ninth grade had been there for a very long time. So it can be really open, right? If you want to do it thematically, I've seen and talked to other people who have focused on like maybe one theme for the whole year, like power, and it's sort of who has power, who doesn't, who has agency, who doesn't, and that can be something that some big theme that can cover the entire year and can be applied in every region, every theme, every topic, right? So I've seen people do that, and then do it in project based. I don't know in terms of the context of your school, but those are definitely something to think about. So Corey, so you were teaching seventh grade and you're moving up into the high school as well. Are you still continuing with seventh grade?
No, we're shifting all kinds of people this year. So I have never taken a world history class in my life. So this was sort of a surprise. But we also are kind of starting to there was a PBL training this summer. I don't know when it's coming down to be required, because I think in Indiana it's going to be by 2025. And so I really have no idea what I'm doing with that yet.
So it's kind of like an open book for you, right?
Yeah.
So, and that's exciting because then you can start building and thinking towards PBL. And sometimes thematic approaches work really, really well with PBL, right? So it's sort of lots of different things.
Corey, what was your coverage again? I'm sorry, for the class that you're going to be taking over.
Mine?
Yes.
Well, the Indiana standards are all over the place from 8000 BC to current.
Okay.
And then the new book that I didn't have a say in has like one chapter from 8000 BC to 1300, and then it picks up thematically from 1300 to now. I mean, it even talks about COVID and President Trump. So, I mean, I don't know when it's printed, but it's very new.
What are your standards have you covering? Your state standards?
The book has no alignment to the standards, so I'm going to have to go lesson by lesson and figure it out.
Okay.
But
I mean, I know that a couple of years ago I shifted to the current school I'm at as an all-girls private charter, is a public charter school, but we have no textbooks, so we don't use textbooks at all. And as a world history teacher, it has been the biggest blessing in my entire life because I don't have to deal with a textbook. And so what I found is that it's forced me to go back to the state standards and to really dig into those standards. And honestly, I have been able to find every single resource available online to cover those standards more than thoroughly. So that I would say if you're struggling with that, that's the first place I would start is say, what's the state of Indiana expecting me to teach? And I found that tends to be a whole lot more easy to understand, even with, I live in Tennessee, so we got some crazy standards as well. That tends to line up a lot easier because a lot of times those state standards, there's a lot of history teachers and especially professors and people like that from higher education that are on those boards that write those standards. But is it high school level?
It's high school, but I didn't really use a book before because I taught sixth grade social studies in Florida, and the standards were sort of similar to Indiana. So I kind of knew how to hit China and Asia and Africa. But this book, I mean, if I was to give it to the students, there's one chapter for 8,000 years and then the other 11 for 1,300 on, which is standards anyway. So, but I'm a big proponent of like making activities and videos and ed tools and stuff. And the book is kind of,
Is your
Yeah.
is your course state tested?
no.
Okay, that's even better.
Yeah.
So basically, there's going to be no state scores that are going to correlate to how well of a job did you do.
No.
So ultimately,
And
it's going to feel like it's going to be back. Does your principal, does your assistant principal, and do your students and parents feel like you're doing a good job teaching them that course?
well, I'm
So
getting
wide
two new
open.
admins. I'm getting 2 new admins and a new curriculum director, and I have no idea what any
There
of
you
them
go.
expect. So I get
There
a
you
free
go.
pass for the whole year.
There you go. Sorry to take over that conversation.
Oh, no, not at all. No, it's a free conversation, free flowing conversation, I'm hoping. So anyone just feel free to jump in with questions. I see there's been a little bit of conversation about, and I know like shifting to world history. And another thing, Corey and everyone else, very few of us actually took world history, right? Like I definitely did not. I focused entirely on my first half of my history major was entirely on Chinese history. And then the second half was entirely on American history. So I've never taken a real, like what we would call world history survey course either. So a lot of us are just sort of cobbling it together. But now that world history has been a thing for a little while, there's a lot of great resources. The OER project would be another place I would point you to if you're very new to it, because they're using some pretty neat sort of world historical frameworks that have been worked on by world historians, like pretty well-known world historians. Another one that might be controversial is to look at, and because I'm so done with College Board, but they a few years ago came out with a pre-AP world history program. There's no tests around it, but it might be interesting to take a look and look at and see how that's formulated. I think they put a lot of effort and resources towards that because of course they want to set up for their other AP courses. And the person who was coordinating that, he was very enthusiastic, and he was able to draw upon really excellent world history educators to create that course. So that's something that you might want to look into. Okay. The other one was about that popped in was about mythology. Anyone want to take that on in terms of, do you do anything? I see some resources that have been shared. That you do anything interesting with mythology?
I shared one of my links in the chat. One of the things I really enjoy doing with that is taking the origin stories, the origin myths, and then taking the same coverage of that from the textbook or from a secondary source and providing both of them to the students and having them kind of, first of all, determine which is the myth, which is the history, which is never that difficult. But then what specific words led them in that direction? Why would a culture want to tell their story in this way versus the historical way, which is really interesting with the Aztecs when you look at their origin story versus what really put them on that island. You can see why they wouldn't want the whole world knowing that that's how they got there. So that to me is a lot of fun. So putting them in that context of comparing them to the historical record, kids seem to get into that.
Great, thanks, Kevin. And anyone else use mythology or integrate it into your world history or your world cultures? I'm actually pretty old school there. I don't know if anyone still uses Joseph Campbell, but I veer back to his universal human psyche, and I can share that. I hadn't thought about that until the question popped up. And so I start that at the beginning of the year when we're looking at world religions, and it's used as sort of like an overarching conceptual thing for ninth graders. It's a little bit hard, so I have to really break it down for them and have them sort of look at it, and we circle back to it over and over again every time go to a new region. And basically it's three things. It's this acknowledgement of death and life, but more death than life. So this is the universal human psyche of Joseph Campbell. Then, and then the maintenance of social order. And then finally sort of the observance of nature, and the sort of the feeling of awe towards nature. So that's like the three main concepts. And for every myth that I share, every mythology I share from different cultures, I ask them to use that as a framing, because I want them, one of the things I want them to see is sort of a commonality, right? That's why it's called the universal human psyche. So at the end, they're like, all of these different stories that are thrown out at them, they're like, oh, universal human psyche. Like they totally understand, like they're acknowledging death, right? They're acknowledging, and they're acknowledging sort of, often these stories have like a moral element to it to uphold the social order, and they see that. So that's something I use to frame their understanding of mythology throughout the year. All right, I'm scrolling a little bit earlier because I was just talking, and I'm looking at sort of decentering, decolonizing. That was something that you were interested in. So Mrs. Blaze, did you want to say something about that?
Yeah, hi. No, right now I've been teaching world history and world cultures honors for 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 years. I'm not sure at this point. It all kind of blends together. But as time has gone on, it's become very Eurocentric, and it's my comfort zone. But at the same point in time, I want to, like, when you talk about the Renaissance, it wasn't just Italy, there's more to that. And I want to find more sources to kind of give a more well-rounded approach to all world cultures and world history, as opposed to just Europe and the accessory nations, quote unquote. So it's kind of hard for me to find sources that are valid, captivating, and relevant to what we're dealing with.
Is anyone else struggling with that, or have strategies around that issue, around working around that? I know, Todd, you had said something about having similar issues.
I think the issue that I have is my school is it's a small, like I said, a public charter school, but like the vast majority of our students are students of color. And so, here's the white dude up here teaching them about white history. And so I want to cover things that are relevant to them, while at the same time having the knowledge that there is a state test at the end of this thing, and which, my school is very beholden to test scores, because as a charter, we have to, in the state of Tennessee, we have to prove not only do we have to match the scores of the county that holds our charter, we actually have to accelerate that. So we have to show that not only this charter is a better option. Test scores right now, the only metric we have to gauge that. So, but at the same time, like I know in history, there's a lot of, I do a lot of literacy. My ninth grade English teacher and I do a really deep integration between our two courses. And so a lot of the writing skills and things that we work on in our class, we kind of link with hers. They read a lot of the sources and a lot of the readings and things. They read White Man's Burden and talk about that. They when we talk about World War I, they go into they do kind of a Dulce Decorum Est, other kind of post-war poetry unit that they do to look at, and it does a really good job of looking at like the disillusionment and others of the soldiers coming back from war, which really helps me when I lead into World War II. We get into World War II, they read Night, and they also read a whole bunch of things. We do like an entire like a 3-week long like Holocaust unit, and so you know, our classes really kind of link up together, but you know, it's still very Eurocentric. I've really done I think I've got a pretty good job of getting the American part out of it, because so much of world history can just be, how does the world impact America? And what I tell the kids is that you're going to take American history next year. So, you know, it gets a lot more difficult starting in World War II and on. But up until that point, it's really not that hard to rip America out of the world history too much. But yeah, I'm just I really want to focus more on Latin America. I think Latin America and Latin American history gets maybe 4 standards out of the 78 that I have to cover. African history gets 4 or 5, maybe, if you're really looking to stretch it. So yeah, really trying I want them to learn about people that look like them, that are from the places that their families are from. You know, anyway, I'll shut up.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of my goal. That's what I'm trying to do.
Do you have things that you could show about how you integrate with English? Because I was doing that with 7th grade. So we read like A Long Walk to Water and Malala, but I don't know anything at the high school level. And our test scores are pretty rough. And since I'm going to have these kids that I had 7th grade as 9th grade, I know that English-wise, they're not that strong. But anyway, do you have how do you take the English and social studies together, like on a day-to-day basis, what it looks like?
I mean, honestly, part of it is that she and I work really well together. It's like we both are like 9th grade team lead, you know, co-team leads. And so we collaborate a good bit. But we start in the summertime, and we kind of talk about, like, we look at, because I don't know much about language arts and literacy standards, and she doesn't know a whole lot about history standards. And so we kind of talk about what is it that we're going to be covering, we're going to be talking about. And then we look at for ways of, like, how can we integrate, mainly, you know, how can I integrate those language arts skills in my class. So we do a lot of, like, graphic organizers, a lot of the writing portion that really benefits me, because the test that my students take it's an AP style test where they have a DBQ, they have free response questions. So those writing skills, it's right in with that for me. But it's going to help them with their writing assessment that they have to take as 9th graders. So we try to do that almost every time we write. I try to emulate, like, what is it that they're doing in language arts class, whether it's the planning to write or the style or whatever it is. And then we kind of go through my history curriculum, and she looks for ways of, like, what are some readings, what are some things that she can pull out. We don't do a whole lot first semester, or first quarter, I should say. First quarter is they changed the standards up on us, and so I used to start with Enlightenment and the Scientific Revolution, and now I have to go all the way back to really with the Portuguese and the global slave trade, which I'm kind of happy with, because it gives me a good chance to really give a good basis of Africa and what was Africa like before colonization. But there's not a whole lot that lines up with what she has to teach in 9th grade. But second quarter with the Industrial Revolution, they do a modest proposal, which is a reading that's talking about, you know, should you eat babies? And it's in the Irish potato famine, and it's, you know, it's kind of satire. It's tongue in cheek, but at the same time, the kids, some of them will be like, wait. Are they eating babies? Like, no, they're not eating babies, but that, like, you know, it's getting them to think about starvation. And so, you know, we talk about, like, monocrops and dependence on that monoculture that the Industrial Revolution brought about. You know, that brings in the Industrial Revolution for me. But when we get into, like, the colonization, white man's burden, black man's burden, which is a response to it, we've read The Butcher of Congo, about King Leopold and the, you know, things that were going on in the Belgian Congo. World War I, World War II, we do a lot of things there. I see if I can find a syllabus. I might be able to email it to you or send it to the link here just for other people to peruse. But I think
that's a great idea, to reach out to some teachers who are have set curriculums and see if there's any place to intersect. I know when I teach Age of Imperialism, most of my 10th graders are reading Things Fall Apart by Achebe. So it goes great, and then the English teacher's like, great, you're going to be doing a lot of the history. I don't have to cover that. We can just get into the book, and then they come with, that perspective because they dig pretty deep into the novel. Liz, it's great to see you. Just to catch you up, we are right now talking about decolonizing the world history curriculum, and I know that's near and dear to your heart as well. So we're just, bouncing some ideas. I have a whole wakelet about sort of decolonizing within the larger world history collaboration wakelet. So please take a look at that. I know, so for me, I try to find entry points that are not Eurocentric. So when we can come to the Age of Revolutions, what does everyone cover? And what does the most of the chapter in the world history textbooks, it covers the French Revolution, right? And we all know the French Revolution wasn't that revolutionary. So my entry point now is Haitian Revolution. So just trying to find different entry points that are not centered in Europe, not centered in the United or America. And this has been just a huge sea change for me. I've pulled together this curriculum. I was a part of a summer institute like 20 something years ago, and my friend had pulled it out and he's like, look at this person was so on edge like 20 years ago and doing this huge curriculum unit on the Haitian Revolution. So we pulled bits and pieces from that. And that's our main entry point now. And then I'm also looking at, I really find it very important to bring in women. So my Age of Revolutions, instead of just looking at, Simone Bolivar and Toussaint Louverture, I'm also looking at revolutionary women of the time. So women of color, like Michaela Bastida from and Manuela Sáenz, and who I just sort of stumbled upon because I was reading my textbook. I was like, there's this short little paragraph regarding Manuela Sáenz, who was the mistress of Simone Bolivar, and I was like, that's just so strange. There's almost no context except that she was his lover, and and then I was like, I need to find out more about this woman. So I dug deep in research, and I integrate her as Bolivar calls her the liberator of the liberator. So and there's much more information about her these days. So oh yes, I love that, Gabe. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Well, just the communities in Brazil, and the fact that the kids are just thinking as enslaved persons, and lack of agency, and so they see these, and you paint them across, for example, Sans Souci in Haiti, or the Quilombos in Brazil, and some of the other communities and the still remaining communities, for example, in Guatemala, the Garifuna, and in Belize, and all these different things. So again, getting to the idea that they weren't just sitting back and waiting for things to happen. And some of the colonies were quite successful for periods of time. Then you can get into the Zinni Revolt, in North America, and so they can see the time frame and how it's working with that.
Erin, can you tell us a little bit? I haven't heard of Rani Lakshmi-Bal before.
It just I don't. Can you hear me? I just want to make sure. Okay. It's just a story of going against British imperialism, and there's a lot of great imagery around her story. So, again, it's I think what I hear everyone saying, which I think is so important, is to maybe focus on theme and then bring in different perspectives on that theme. I have a non-Eurocentric world history curriculum right now, sort of by chance, based on how the 2-year world history used to be done. I taught the Eastern side of that in Africa, so all of Asia and Africa. And now I think they're going to be combining in my school. Now it's going to be basically every year between 8th and 12th, they're going to get American, and we're going to have 1 year of world history. And what I'm very nervous about is that's going to become Eurocentric. So I think what I'm going to try to focus on is maybe not going back so far, maybe starting in like, I don't know, 1800, and maybe just referring back to things as needed, and then focusing on themes and then bringing in different perspectives on the theme. So if you're talking about revolutions, again, like just bringing in different stories, choosing one from China, choosing one from India, choosing Haiti is a great example. I think that that's the way to do it, is go by theme and bring in different perspectives, because that way you can, even if your curriculum requires you to be Eurocentric, which again, I know is a big problem. A lot of the districts around me already have that. And like I said, I feel like that's where we're going. I just feel like it's a good way to get into it, is the different perspectives. I also, I just struggle finding resources for world history. American history, there's everything. European history, there's tons. And you really have to do all your own work. You have to make all your own materials, lectures, textbooks, everything. Everything has to be from scratch. You have to like cobble things together. So there's a world history textbook, but I always find it's inadequate. But anyway, so I don't know if that helps.
Just in response to you, Erin, it's getting better.
It is. Thanks to everyone on teacher Twitter and all of these great, groups. That's where it's getting a lot better, I think. Thank you.
I wasn't sure how much to highlight this, but I'm very excited. The World History Commons, I'm actually on the advisory board, and it was an NEH grant. Just so much more materials out there. And if you haven't been there before, you need to go. Basically because there is sort of so many, so basically what the World History Commons was, in the vision of Mary Wiesner Hanks, who was one of the project proponents of it. She had this vision of a place where teachers, professors, scholars could go to find anything about world history. So there's sources, there's lesson plans. So they've gone and pulled it all to one place. This is like a go-to place if you're looking for anything about it. And then they had world historians and scholars writing these like pieces called methods. Some approaching primary sources, approaching art, and just very well-known historians showing how to see it from a global perspective. So that is a great place to go.
This makes me so happy. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so it was in beta testing last year, and they've really, really launched it now, and I'm seeing it being used more. And in fact, Gabe already had it. He was ahead of me, and he had put it in the Wakelet. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad that people are using it. So it's just something that all the world historians that I know have really found it problematic, that it was so hard to find things, and you have to work so hard to cobble things together. And I would say that the OER project is similar to everyone who's been working on it are world historians and world history educators. So that's another nice resource, a go-to resource for anyone who's just starting off with world history. Okay. All right. Liz, you had just put something in the chat. You want to talk a little bit about your thoughts around that?
Yeah, I have put in a slide deck that I used I taught world thematically this past year, and got to collaborate with a couple of my candidates that were placed at a school site in my district, and looking at women in revolutions and highlighting them, but also connecting modern situations that were going on. And so that helped to see like some of that continuity and change for the students. So like we had finished talking about the Enlightenment and taking a look at what was going on in Belarus with the Floyd protest and that. And so helping them see those continuing of things. And then I found wanting to look at social justice standards and bring in SDGs. I found that looking at things in the past and which SDGs do these connect with, and then connecting modern events with the SDGs, even though that's not how they're were meant to be. But that was a nice grounding point for my students to see continuity and change between different events. So we look at something, okay, which of these SDGs is involved in here? And then looking at a contemporary issue and grounding that to help frame continuity and change was really beneficial for my sophomores in world history.
Great. I love that layering of the SDGs there. I mean, I think with in Massachusetts, we had a civil, I'm just blanking for a second, a civics bill. That was, I was like, not so, a civics bill that was passed in 2018. And this was the year that we were supposed to implement it, but we didn't do it. So next year we're looking at in the high school, and I want to grab onto it because, you know, in 9th grade, that's when the kids have a little bit more space in their time, and they're willing to put a little bit more effort in. And I love thinking about it in terms of SDGs. Thank you. All right. Yeah, the other, in terms of resources, I really wanted also to highlight maybe things that are less, well, these are all things I'm pretty involved in, so I'm sorry, just full transparency there. The other thing that I wanted to highlight is this World History Connected. So I know sometimes it's hard to find some of these things, but the World History Association oversees some of this, like the World History Commons that I mentioned earlier. That was one of the projects that was worked on by the World History Association. And here's another one. This is a free online magazine that's been going on for years now. And sometimes you have to kind of look through it and try to find out. But I think if you open it up, the last issue was all about Latin American history. And what we're really trying to work on hard now is every single issue that comes out, that there are sort of like a teachings, and it was done for a little while, but the editor who's like overseeing innovative teaching practices, he left and there was no one to replace for many years. I'm now one of the co-editors to do that. So we're really working on getting veteran world history teachers taking a look at some of the more recent scholarship and really bringing it in. How do we bring this into the classroom? Okay, so I'm hoping that people look at that. The previous one was on Southeast Asia. So I'm really excited to be working more closely. My co-editor, she had been a classroom teacher for 18 years and then went and got her PhD. So works with AHA now, is doing more scholarship, but she has a real sense of like what works in the classroom as well. So hopefully that is another resource that all of you could benefit from. And if you just want to learn about anything, we have like budding scholars or even veteran scholars who are experts in their field, and they're writing short articles, things that they're researching, things that they're finding out. So feeling like they're sort of all on the sort of the cutting edge of like world history research as well, with a real lens towards making it classroom accessible. Okay. Oh, Corey asked a question. This is not my area of expertise. Gabe, I know you did a bunch of escape rooms this year. How do you approach that?
Nothing as far as like world history, more so it's like modern culture. But as far as that, I think I would start with Mr. Tom Mulaney, and Tom Mulaney has a lot of different um, on it. On it, I can post. I'll look and post if I find anything.
Okay, and please continue to drop in chat. I know Gabe and I will add things to the Wakelet. Oh yes, Liz, those are awesome. I went to a few of them last year. The Arias Summer Institutes are just amazing in terms of global issues, global history. They put out some really great stuff. So for me, I see it as world history is so overwhelming, and I still am learning. Last summer, I took one on West Africa. I took a course on West Africa because I was like, I don't know enough about it. I'm trying to teach it. So just to be patient with yourself, and you'll still be ahead of the students. And just I'm adding on little things every year. Like I'm going back and tweaking one thing. Like if you say, I'm just doing one thing, the basic curriculum's there, but I know the first couple of years was really challenging, just because none of us had taken, like, Chinese history. I got that, right? But I had never taken an African history course. I had never taken a Latin American history course. And so adding those a little bit at a time was year after year, sort of adding those things on. Okay. All right. Thanks, Gabe, for adding that. Those digital breakouts, those are awesome. Right. So anyone else have any questions that they'd like to discuss and cover? You guys feel free to talk too. I actually hate talking on Zooms. Gabe, I didn't know you were gonna have me do most of the moderating.
You do such a great job, and you're so experienced. Hey, are you gonna do the program with Susan Douglas on the Islamic world? And I think.
Oh yeah, I did something with her last summer too. Yeah, she did one on the Gold Road. Was she part of that?
Good.
I can't this year. I have some other things that are happening. So yeah, look for summer institutes. A lot of them are still free, and most of them are still on Zoom. They're not in person. And so sort of areas of the world. I'll start posting. Arias is one of the good. You can follow her on Twitter as well. That's one of the really ones that I've found really, really helpful. And then Howard University is the one that came out with the West African, the Gold Road course last summer. But as I'm seeing things, like right now I'm doing the Council for Middle Eastern Studies. It's happening, and tomorrow's the last day. No, Thursday's the last day from out of Yale University, and it's so fascinating. The people that they've brought in, all the scholars they've brought in, and then putting it in the context of it's a K through 12 summer institute. So looking for that, I think that's. Oh yes, yeah. Thanks, Gabe. Gabe actually is probably better in terms of knowing what's out there. I forget what Arias stands for. It's Arias UCB, because it's out of UC Berkeley. The OER project is going to be putting on, and I thought last year they did an amazing job. I'm going to be on vacation this year, so I won't be able to join, but the OER project is putting on their social studies conference, and it's for all social studies, but a lot of world history is integrated into that. Gabe, you're going to be on it? I can still watch the TED Talk, but I won't be. I can't, I just can't be, I'm on vacation and we're probably going to be at a place where I'm going to be offline. That's amazing. And yeah, so that's in the beginning of August, the OER project. So if you just look OER project, the link that Gabe has posted. So Gabe, are you involved with organizing for that this year at all?
Organizing just, but helping get more people aware and contacting, especially like in Texas and other places.
Yeah.
But there are stipends available and all the resources are free. There's coursework. There is just tons and tons of recorded previous sessions.
Yeah.
And all those sessions will be recorded this year. So check it out in August.
Yeah, the one, I remember watching, there's one on mythology from last year too. It was really, all of the pre-recorded sessions were really well done. And then the live sessions were amazing. So that's something I'm really sad to miss out this year. Even though it's online. It would be so much better if we were in person.
Good. We would go.
Yeah. All right, and then one final source that I had mentioned earlier, primary source, they have all these LibGuides to different areas. And they do K through 12 training. So if you're working with younger students, that might also be helpful. So they have all of these different teacher guides. They have this great teacher podcast as well called What Teachers Need to Know. And they had all these episodes on Africa and the Middle East primarily. They did Middle East the year before and Africa this past year, I believe. So if you really need to have like a quick study of like parts of world, those two areas of world history, which I never even had any coursework on. So when I came across this, I was like, this is so great. I wish I knew about this 20 years ago, or they didn't have it 20 years ago, but I wish they had it 20 years ago. But yeah, that's sort of like a quick sort of, you can be listening to while you're working out or driving on vacation. They're quick and they usually have a scholar and then a master teacher who they highlight, and they talk a little bit about how they work some of the materials into their classroom. So that's all I have in terms of sources and resources for everyone. Does anyone else have any questions?
I would reach out to, going along with what you were saying earlier, but I would reach out to the various organizations. For example, like Liz and I both did the Turkish Cultural Foundation, and we spent like 3 weeks in Turkey, and
oh, nice.
all the different resources, and there's so many different opportunities out there, and travel the world, you meet government, you meet historians, and go to the museums, you go to the sites, and it's life-changing.
Yeah. Once all the travel opens up, hopefully soon, maybe by next summer. But yeah, I've traveled and done some traveling on my own with my family, but also with, like, Primary Source does it's a stipended. Usually they go to Asia. They have these great. I did a Silk Road trip with them, and that was life-changing. Gabe, you and I, we got to get a grant together and travel the world. Yeah.
The travel also brings to mind, like, Anthony Bourdain. His Places Untraveled, I think that was the show. I know he had a few, like the Nile one, where he goes through and the history behind it. I liked how, granted, you can't show like necessarily the drinking part on that, but some of his shows, like how he puts it in context and goes to the people, I will tell like my candidates, like, some of those shows are look at and get a sense of the history and the like. And I know the Top Chef, they did one on African food, African cuisine, and just the backstory and them talking to people, I think is nice. And I think anytime you can kind of get those like pop culture elements in there, it's a good hook, at least for me with the sophomores on college prep. I know there was I think it was MTV Cribs, Trevor Noah going to visit his grandma in Africa, and using that to kind of like have that conversation on race and what was going on with apartheid. And I think some of those clips are good access and entry points to getting the kids in, or using Prophets of the City and the rap on 94 Never Again with Mandela, and how music helps to preserve the history. Okay, the Congo, yes, that's the one. That's the episode. So I think those are some also interesting points. And then there's some hidden treasures in the BBC Sounds. They have I stumbled across one on Ethiopia's war hero, and put that in our Korean War choice board for the Cold War. So the BBC Sounds has some stories I haven't heard about, or people I hadn't heard about, and to bring those opportunities into the classroom with BBC. Golden nuggets out there.
So I just see, well, Scott just disappeared. He jumped in and then he disappeared.
No, I'm here.
Oh, you are there. Hi, Scott.
Sorry, everybody. I don't think I do time zones very well.
That's okay. I was kind of messing around with mine too. And I got up at 6:15 from my nap and I was like, oh crap. And then I was like, wait a second. He sent it as central, so I'm okay. Yeah, we were just wrapping up, Scott.
Well, I'm sorry I missed the party. So the only thing I've been kind of bullish about is I went really deep into the Panama Canal last year, and some of that was recorded, some of that was archived for our CLIck project as a U.S. history lesson. But I really think it's a world history lesson, and it talks about the differences in the gold pay scale versus the silver pay scale, and just allow students to dive in and do some research on who really built the Panama Canal and who gets the credit. So I'll slide that into the chat, and then I'll try and catch up the next time you guys do one of these. I'm sorry I missed out.
You know, you always have such great things to share. So follow Scott on Twitter if you haven't already. All right. So some of the resources and links that you've all shared with us, thank you so much. We'll add it to the Wakelet, and then we will. Gabe, you're going to email it out to everybody.
Yeah, I've been posting it. Then I'm going to post it on Facebook and Twitter as well.
Yay! Okay.
Once I do the video, condense it for everybody.
Yeah, and feel free to message me. I'm gonna be, except for the 1 week I'm gonna be away. I'll be available through Twitter, or I can also leave my email, I guess.
Where's the vacay anyway?
What?
Where are you going for the vacay?
Yeah. We are going, wait one sec, sorry. We are going to Maine.
Nice.
We got a little, we were able to book a little house that's on the water. So
very cool.
I'm very excited. Yeah.
What part?
It's going to be north of Portland. We couldn't, we weren't sure we could get my younger one vaccinated. So we're like, we're not going to fly anywhere. But yeah, she is now. So we could have, but we're very happy. We're going to go to New York City for 1 week, and then we're going to go to Maine away from everyone for 1 week. So
that's awesome. I grew up on the coast of New Hampshire, and used to spend summers in Boothbay Harbor, Maine. And my grandparents had a house on Lake Sebago in Maine.
Oh, nice.
It was really a wonderful childhood that I didn't realize until after I left New England. So, yeah. but I will say I don't shovel snow anymore. I just, have to breathe smog and dodge earth.
I don't really mind the snow. It's not bad, especially with climate change. It hasn't been as bad. But yeah, I've trained both my daughters to shovel. So, okay. Thank you everyone for coming. Thanks. Oh, Scott, you shared something about your Panama Canal. Thank you. Yeah, thanks everyone for coming, and thanks Gabe for coordinating and organizing and setting everything up. I'm hoping that everyone has a great summer and rest and relax. I can't believe we even got a dozen people here. Everyone should be resting. Everyone should be resting, right?
It's time to rest now. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
Everyone, thanks everyone for coming.
Thanks. Bye.